We are only speaking the actual fact. We are only speaking the actual facts. We are only speaking the actual facts. Speaking the actual facts, the actual facts.
We got to do soyons.
We are only speaking the actual facts, the actual facts, the actual facts, the actual facts.
We got to do soyons.
We are only speaking the actual facts, the actual facts, the actual facts, the actual facts.
We got to do soyons.
Rahubat, greetings. Assalamu alaikum to the Muslims. Shalom alaikum to the Hebrews. Greetings to all my Nation of Islam members that are joining in. I greet you all as Rahubat and welcome to the Actual Facts podcast. This is episode 2. And in this episode, I think if you have caught the previous episode, which is the origins of man, who created the black race, this continuation is due to the fact that it's a very popular topic. We got some great reviews last episode. And what we will attempt to do in this episode is make clear the true story of creation, the true story of the creation of the races on the planet. And with this podcast, you should be prepared to enjoy or embark upon a numerous amount of subjects and titles that people inquire about, questions that the scientific community has asked for years, questions that the religious community has asked. What we do here is make things clear with irrefutable facts as taught to us by His Excellency, Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, our spiritual teacher, a master in flesh. We know him as God in flesh. And that will be shown throughout these podcasts and these episodes as we disclose the affirmation that he has given us in the over 1,000, let's say 500 books that he's written. And we acknowledge him in this regard because of his sacrifice and his willingness to teach for the last 50 years to the lost Nagaru or Negroids on this planet, the black race. And it is our job to continue to teach the information or affirmation that he's written in a series of books known as The Actual Facts. There's another series of books called Patarak, right? For those that know Dr. York or has, obviously, the world knows his doctrine. The world has encountered the many books that have been in circulation for the last 30 or so years, 40 years, 50, since 1967. So you're almost close to 60 years that this supreme being has been teaching and raising the souls and awakening the minds of the Garden black race Africans of the diaspora, the African continent, these individuals who are lost and have been asleep for the last 6,000 years due to religious ignorance, a religious hypnotic spell that has been cast upon our people, regardless of what sect you belong to. You can be a Muslim, you can be a Christian, you can be a Jew, you can be a Hebrew Israelite, whatever denomination you proclaim, right? These are doctrines that have been taught to our people and given to our people by foreigners, by other races, by other cultures, right, that speak specific languages and have specific books that they have written, that they're responsible for, and that they have given our people, that, and we in turn have converted to these doctrines. So a lot of times what happens is our people begin to teach these doctrines because they've been converted, because they accept Islam, the Arabs, Quran, right? Because they accept the Bible, the Old and New Testament given to them by Mesopotamian cultures, which you know is Father Abraham or Ibrahim, where most of those monotheistic doctrines call him as their father or the originator of their doctrine. And that's okay, because we have to address the origins of these books. We have to address why they were given to us. We have to address if the originals of these books exist, right? Who wrote these books? Why did they write them? And what context and what language by which we're receiving and by which we're reading them, and why we have accepted them and live our lives by these books and by their God, right? And so with accepting their God, with accepting their concepts, what happens is we get locked in the definitions by which they want us to have of their explanation of their religions. And in their religious doctrines, their images by which they teach the black race is images of them. The authorities of their cultures look like them. The prophets, the apostles, the so-called Nebi or Rasul, the Muslims say Rasulullah Muhammad, looks like the Arabs, looks like the Greeks. And therefore they have a monopoly on the information and the doctrine by which our people convert to. And with that, it leaves us and it gives us an inferiority complex, because we have to look for them for salvation. We have to look to them for explanations of their books. In this day and time, we have our master teacher, Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, who we will do a thorough explanation of who he is in this day and time, so that our people can understand, as an incarnated being, a divine being, his job here on this planet is to raise the 144,000 lost deities, the gods of the planet, the first race, the first people of the planet, in order to restore your divine right, to restore your divine link to your ancestors, because the day and time that we're in is shifting to where there's a new conscious grid, or a new conscious, let's say, transformation that is forcing our people to think differently. And we have to be in place to answer these questions, because the intelligence of our people is expanding, and they're having questions that the average preacher, reverend, imam don't know and can't answer. But no one is addressing your soul. No one is addressing your salvation. No one is really answering the questions about who and what your God is. The questions that you will see on this podcast and hear answered with actual facts will be done 3 times a month, the 9th, the 19th, and the 27th. The reason why we chose this, the creation of the origin of man, is because we're kind of trying to start at a beginning, to where our people are able to get a grasp of what Wu Sabat teaches as it relates to the creation story. In order to cleanse the mind of our people, you have to give them information that is correct and is organized. When you're dealing with religious doctrine, it's not organized, it's filled with holes, it's filled with doubt, it's filled with conjecture, it's filled with explanations that don't make sense. A lot of times when you look at the creation story, particularly as it relates to the Bible and Genesis, you see characters in these books, in these chapters, that when you read it, you begin to see similarities in human nature as it relates to this Lord, right? Or these beings that it speaks about, the us in Genesis, as you read in Genesis 1:27. Also, you read that in Genesis 3:6. 3:6 with the chapter of the serpent. You read it in 3:5. You read it also in 3:22. The man has become as one of us. So we recognize that there's a group of beings there, right? This is the Bible story, right? So what happens is when you're dealing with this this creation story, you'll read that this took 7 days for this Lord to make this planet Earth, 7 days for this creation, and he rested on the seventh day. 6 days actually rested on the seventh day. However, what you don't see in the Hebrew, right? What you see in the Hebrew is you'll see many times these words that have been mistranslated into the English have different meanings in the Hebrew. And because of that, you get lost when in your understanding. So when a person reads the book of Genesis and it says, in the beginning, God, right? It uses a singular form of the word God. So most of the religious world, I'm talking about Muslims, Christians, and Jews, when you read it, is a confusion there because you think there's a singular being at work. And in your mind, you have a concept of, right? You have a concept of one being that all of a sudden in the middle of nowhere, all alone, by himself, decided to do what? Get out of boredom, let's make the universe. Let's make a man. Let's make these workers. Let's make a planet. Let's make plants and animals and mammals and divide the day from the night and let's create a sun and let's create a moon. So the concept of this God is implanted in the mind at a very young age. And then we begin to defend this concept without any scrutiny or questioning whether or not it makes sense. And so even the Muslims have the same problem when they look in their Quran and they see that Allah, they call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, came down to the planet, or what they call in Arabic, and molded or shaped Adam from black mud or clay, right? But he did this obviously in a physical form, because you can't grab clay or mud as a spirit. Obviously, this Lord of Genesis, when he made man, created man in the physical, because you can't take physical earth and mold and shape, right? When you look in the Hebrew, the word Yad, when you see that he took and created with his hand, you see a creation image, which is a reflection of this God or these beings. So in God, or Elohim in the Hebrew, when you read in the Strong's 410, right, you'll see, or 430, you'll read that it's a group of beings. It's a plurality in the Hebrew. And I have this discussion with the Hebrew Israelites all the time, because for some reason they're under the impression that it's not a plural, and they argue this fact. In all grammar, all Hebrew grammar, when you look at the Hebrew grammatical structure, when you see the yod and the mem at the end of a word in the Hebrew, it denotes plurality. So it uses that in the Strong's 410 for the word God throughout the first chapter. You'll see it, right? In the first chapter, you see God throughout. And then in chapter 2, this Lord comes in the picture. And the Lord God, you see that in Genesis chapter 2, verse 2, and chapter 2, verse 3. And he begins to partake in these activities on the planet. He's walking and talking. He's planting trees. He's doing these particular activities. However, they don't address that the mistranslation of the plural comes into a singular. And the word God now is looked at as a one being, when in actuality, there was a group of beings there. There was a group of beings, the us, that is responsible for, at that particular time, in a particular beginning, right? Not at the beginning. You see, it's in the beginning, fi, right? Which is Arabic for in a particular time frame, not at the beginning of all things. That's the first thing, right? So when you look at that, you see that you have to identify who this group of beings are. Why are these beings walking and talking and asking questions? Why is this Lord God looking for man? Why is he planting trees, as it says in Genesis 2:9? Right? Why is he creating tests for his children. This is the type of God that we have to question in order for us to properly put in context at who this character is. Because everyone wants you to convert to a specific doctrine. Muslims want you to convert to Islam. Take your shahada, fear Allah. You say, where's Allah? Oh, he's in heaven. Where's heaven? Further than the furthest star. Is he a man? Is he? No, he's a spirit, but he's inside. He's inside. Spirits are inside. He's inside heaven. Describe heaven. You ask a Muslim to describe heaven. Literally in their Quran, literally in their hadith, they teach that heaven has, right, rivers of milk and honey. They teach you that you will wear robes. Most Muslims, Christians, and Jews teach that angels wear robes. But yet they teach that these beings are spiritual beings. Then you ask them, what is the purpose of a robe? They can't answer the question. And they say that, well, you just have to have faith. It's not time for that. Let's deal with the facts. That's what this Actual Facts podcast is about. So when you address this God character in Genesis, and we can get into the quotes. However, we're going to get into the quotes, but there's a lot to cover. When you address this God character and this being, you see that one, when they came to the planet, they said, we do not have a man to till the ground. And they needed a particular man to till the ground, to do specific work for them. So they created this being in their image and after their likeness, because there was a conversation that took place. This God was not alone, as they claim. He was not by himself, as they claim. And if you say, well, he was with angels and he was with beings, then that means that he created these angels, according to religion, in a specific place. In Revelations 9, when you read that there was a war in heaven, there was a battle that took place, then you have to acknowledge that these angels are physical. If you don't acknowledge that they're physical, then you can't acknowledge the depiction of the religious doctrines that you convert to, of them having robes, or them having wings, or them coming down in Genesis chapter 6 and mingled amongst human beings. It literally says, and the sons of God came down and went in unto the daughters of men. And you'll read that in Genesis chapter 6. Actually, chapter 5 and 6, or 6 verse 5, where you see that these sons of God, not only do you have God as a being, but you have the sons of God coming down. And it came to pass, I'm in Genesis chapter 6, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God, that word is Bain Elohim. So we have to acknowledge that God has sons.
We are only speaking the actual
Thanks for joining the Actual Facts podcast. If you enjoy these lectures, please feel free to check out previously recorded episodes. Just click the link in the window, and please don't forget to subscribe, share, and like.
With Dr. Deuce, York.
We are only speaking the actual facts, the actual facts, the actual facts, the actual